Hello, everyone out in internet land. Hey, we're glad that you're with us. We were off last week, but here we are this week. We're in a live meeting. We're also going live on Facebook and YouTube, and so we're glad to get a chance to do this and be with you and share some things that might, we hope, will be helpful and beneficial to you, to help you to learn how to grow and maybe find some hope and some healing. Before I go into about our paperwork, I just wanted to we've already prayed here. We've already prayed, had prayer, and one of the things we prayed for was Bill McLemore. I went to Springfield this week and prayed with Bill and Leanne. Pastor Hank and myself, we went up and to see Bill. They put Bill on hospice, but I asked Bill, I said, Bill, is there anything that you want me to say or you want me to know? And he said, just tell everybody that, Jesus loves them and that he loves you too. And that he said that what's going on with him was, according to the doctors, was a result of his years of drug abuse that he had before he got clean and sober and became a drug counselor and a minister and an outreach minister and going to the jails. And he and I worked together on several anti-meth rallies here in Joplin, went to several of his and other places. And he was a man that was interested in trying to bring recovery to people. And so we just want you to pray for him and pray for Leanne and the rest of the family. And just, he's still believing, but at the same time, he knows that unless he has supernatural intervention, he's not long for this life plane. So anyway, just remember Bill. Love Bill. And Bill, if you're watching, because he says he watches this. And so hi Bill, if you're watching. Love you, Bill. So, what we're going to be talking about tonight is step 11. And of course, we'll be reading all the 12 steps. But we're going to be sharing, actually, I was looking for the reading of the step 11. There it is. I just had to turn the page. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I always liked step 11. Step 11 has always been one of my very favorites. Of course, I always say every step's my favorite, but step 11 has always been one of my favorites because it's just so powerful and means so much and to me, and I think it means a lot to a lot of others. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about the topic that we have in the book is a new hiding place. And basically that's talking about instead of hiding in drugs and the other behavioral mechanisms that we've had, that we hide in God. And so we'll be talking about all of that. And so, am I stealing your stuff, guys? And so, what I'm going to be talking about later is about, my title is Meditation and Relapse. Relapse is a part of recovery. It is about progress, not perfection. So that's what I'll be talking about. All right, I usually do a segment here, a weekly thoughts, questions, or quotes. And this one is from Jordan Peterson. And John, we're going to need to turn that heat down just a tad because it's getting too hot now. We figured out how to get the heat working here and it's working too well. Would you agree? Yes, okay. So Jordan Peterson says, we need a purpose in our life, neurologically. Okay? In a scientific form, he says we need to have a purpose neurologically. It is a neurological part of us that needs that purpose, something to run towards. And we need that dreadful part of us to run from. So we need to have something to run towards, but we also need to recognize what we're running from. And I thought that was a good description of dealing with substance abuse. You know, we recognize what we're going to run from, but we're running towards recovery. Just my thoughts. Tony Robbins says this, and he was talking about on turning your life around. He says, first, you have to find out how you got here, right? Right? Before you know how to get out of there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sounds like it, Rick? Then he goes on and says, before you answer, what do I do? You have to answer why you're there. Why am I here in this spot? Okay? And then the answer to that question, because he gave us the answer too, he said, it's not because of circumstances, it's because of our choices. Right? Right? So anyway, thanks for being here. Glad you guys are here, and I'm glad you out on the internet's here. And so I'm going to turn it over, and we'll have the reading of the 12 steps.
Step 1, we admit that we were powerless in our problems and our lives have become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us back to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. 4, we made a search and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact natures of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made a direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and we were wrong, promptly admit it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge and His will for us and the power to carry it out. 12, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you, Ellie.
You're up.
The scripture for this step is, this question is 2 Samuel 22, 1 through 33. I'm not going to read that. I would suggest that you read it because it is David's praise. It tells of what happened to him and how he handled it, how God was there for him. Question 1 is, how was addiction a hiding place from life for me? It gave me a reason to hide because it made me feel like an outcast. It made me feel like nobody was on my side or for me or was really my friend. And compare this to with having God as a hiding place. I have strength, comfort, and peace of mind. With God, all things are possible. And 2 is describe how I experience conscious contact with God. I know that He is with me always. I am continually praying in prayer and meditation. I pray about everything and just pray always, and even when I'm walking down the street, I'm in prayer and just constant meditation with God and communion with God. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to read David, or 2 Samuel. Was it 2 Samuel?
Yes,
2 Samuel
22.
22.
I got it right here. David sang this song to the Lord on the day the Lord rescued him from all his enemies and from Saul. He sang, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my Savior. My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and my place of safety. He is my refuge, my Savior, the one who saves me from violence. I called on the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and He saved me from my enemies. The waves of death overwhelmed me. Floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death laid a trap in my path. But in my distress I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I cried to my God for help. He heard me from His sanctuary. My cry reached His ears. Then the earth quaked and trembled. The foundations of the heavens shook. They quaked because of His anger. Smoke poured from His nostrils. Fierce flames leaped from His mouth. Glowing coals blazed forth from Him. He opened the heavens and came down. Dark storm clouds were beneath His feet. Mounted on a mighty angelic being, He flew, soaring on the wings of the wind. He shrouded Himself in darkness, veiling His approach with dense rain clouds. A great brightness shone around Him, and burning coals blazed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded. He shot arrows and scattered His enemies. His lightning flashed, and they were confused. Then, at the command of the Lord, at the blast of His breath, the bottom of the sea could be seen, and the foundations of the earth were laid bare. He reached down from heaven and rescued me. He drew me out of the deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemies, from those who hated me and were too strong for me. They attacked me at a moment when I was in distress, but the Lord supported me. He led me to a place of safety. He rescued me because He delights in me. The Lord rewarded me for doing right. He restored me because of my innocence. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I have not turned from my God to follow evil. I have followed all His regulations. I have never abandoned His decrees. I am blameless before God. I have kept myself from sin. The Lord rewarded me for doing right. He has seen my innocence. To the faithful you show yourself faithful, and to those with integrity you show integrity. To the pure you show yourselves pure, but to the crooked you show yourselves shrewd. You rescue the humble, but your eyes watch the proud and humiliate them. O Lord, you are my lamp. The Lord lights up my darkness. In your strength I can crush an army. With my God I can scale any wall. God's way is perfect. All the Lord's promises prove true. He is a shield for all who look to Him for protection. For who is God except the Lord? Who but our God is a solid rock? God is my strong fortress, and He makes my ways perfect. That's intense. Like, I heard this preacher one time talk about how he did everything to not, like, go to church with his family. But, like, the more he said he hid, the more over the years he noticed, like, God was, like, recklessly looking for him. And that reminded me of that when I was reading that. Like, God will go to, like, no limits to find us. How about having come from a place where I didn't think much about the consequences of my drug addiction on myself and those around me, thinking I could use drugs whenever I wanted to was not a good way to be. And now, having clearer thinking and awareness that God is watching me and guiding me, I think before I act for the most part now, these days, and make better decisions in my life now that I'm not using drugs, and I don't have to have a guilty conscience about my life and hide.
Amen.
And can deal with things in life, and that is a pleasant place to be, having a feeling of not having to hide from contacting or being contacted by God. God goes to no ends to chase me, no matter how elusive I may have been. Now, living my life without the constant thoughts riddling my mind about drugs, I thank God for that. Any questions? Any questions?
So what about, how do you describe your conscious contact with God?
It's simple. It's not complicated. I don't make it complicated. I kind of view it the same as calling up Zach or you, or, you know, calling my friend, you know. I don't make it different than naturally being. Because I've kind of been there where I was taught that you had to do all these things to have conscious contact with God, and I've learned that that doesn't work for me.
That's good.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Tommy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Zach slept in on me. I don't know where I was. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, I thank you for reading those scriptures there, Tommy. As I went through those scriptures, I had some thoughts on those scriptures, and maybe you can comment on some of that as I share them. And some of my thoughts were his comments. I'm talking about King David's comments about that he had never sinned, he was in right relationship with God, that everything was all right. And what struck me was that he was able to have that, he didn't have a shame consciousness. He accepted God's grace and forgiveness, even though he did multiple things that was not right. Bathsheba was one, had sex with her, and she was a wife to another man, which was a soldier of his, and he tried to trick the guy to have sex with his wife, so it covered his sin, and then that didn't work because he had more character to be with his wife when his men were on the battlefield, and then basically then he told his generals, put him in front of the battle and withdraw, so he'd be killed. So basically he had him murdered. So he had stuff like the rest of us, right? You have stuff. So we all have stuff, right? But my point here was that David, as he was going through this, he was able to see himself through God's eyes. And they were eyes of love. How about you? How about you? How about you? Okay? So this one question, and I warned those that were here earlier that I was going to be asking this, and that was question number 2. I know I have it here somewhere. Yes. Where is that? Maybe it's
It is,
conscious contact. How would you describe your, there it is, it's down on the bottom here. Describe how you experience conscious contact with God. So, who would like to describe your experience? I had Tommy do it here in front of everybody all at once, right in front of the camera, but I won't do that to you.
I do have to say this. I don't get the same response from God like I do out of you or someone else when I contact them. It's different. It's a little different.
So is that how? What do you mean by different? How about that?
Well, he doesn't text me back.
He doesn't.
And he doesn't call me up.
Well,
He just has a different way of
maybe I would not expand on that. Maybe I ought to leave that alone. And so, you know, it really kind of depends on exactly what step 11 is talking about, is developing our conscious contact. Because my connection with God these days are different than days gone by. You follow?
I think.
But God has never texted me, I'll tell you that.
Okay. No.
Not directly, anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's through Tommy.
Or I was gonna say, yeah, sometimes it is. I do get like a message from somebody else, and it's like. But no, I was thinking like that, like back years ago when my life was really messed up. Like I'd be praying all the time to stop, and then I finally realized, no, I need to just stop. And then like I noticed like I don't pray about a lot of stuff like I used to, but I don't have those problems to pray about, really.
And, you know, to tie in with what you said, many years ago, I used to say, God, I need somebody to talk to about this. And then my next thought was, well, he's there. And he knows it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to him instead of trying to find somebody to talk to. And I'm not trying to say that about anybody else, but that's where I was at, and that's what I needed to do. And so, to get my direction. No, I still talk to people about things, but the fact of it is, when I'm in a real distressed time, I go to my best source, and that's God. So, anybody else have conscious contact description? How do you have contact with God? What's your means of contact?
Have a conversation.
Have a conversation, okay?
Prayer, meditation. And then there's, for me, you don't ever want to lose that.
Right?
And in your addiction, I mean, you get close
What does that mean, close?
to where you stop.
Stop having that contact.
You stop talking to you.
Okay, yes,
It's scary.
yeah. And do you know why? You know why you stop?
Yes.
Do I?
That's the devil's trick. You know, to make you think that your addiction is a lot better, get you deeper in.
But I thought you were saying that you stopped having that conscious contact with God,
I
right?
got close.
Okay.
I got real close.
Well, oftentimes, most people, not all people, and Zach talks about this a lot, is that we feel guilty about our mess, and so we feel like we're not acceptable to God, so we withdraw from God because of our issues. But that's exactly the time that we need to go to God
Exactly.
instead of hide from God. See, but we got that from Adam and Eve in the garden. When they messed up, they took off and hid. How do you hide from God? But we're still trying, right? Sometimes we hide through drugs, through alcohol, through acting out.
He waits on you.
Yeah, oh, he does more than that. He's there.
He waits on you to come.
Yeah,
Where?
yeah, well, you know.
He's shooting arrows at your head.
Well, just like Adam and Eve, he goes through the garden. Adam, where are you? He might say, hey, Bob, you hardhead, why ain't you listening? How about that?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened?
Oh, yeah.
Has happened to me. But we're talking about coming from this rescue type connection, which is important, to having a constant contact with God. And how do we have that? How do we have that relationship with Him? And how do you get it? How do you describe it? How do you communicate it? Yeah, it's tough, isn't it, sometimes? Some of the stuff I read about how to describe it was one guy says, well, it's kind of like how you describe vanilla. You know, it's hard to describe some things. And he said, in the way that you have really, you can only to really understand is to experience it. And we've all experienced that conscious contact, all of us. We even had conscious contact with God when we were in the middle of our addiction at our worst moment, particularly in our worst moment. Would you agree with that? Because He's always there. And there's so many people that I've heard say, well, God, if you're there, I need some help here. Well, see, you believe that He's there, or you wouldn't even say that, okay? But there's the other part of you that's questioning that. But I want to say that part that you said, if you're there, that's what I call faith. And faith pleases God, no matter what how you discount it, okay? Because you'll beat yourself up for that. But God is able to move on that.
Amen.
Right? So what we have here is that this conscious contact and having these experiences. And man, if we can recognize and remember and because sometimes we've had conscious contact and we didn't even realize it until it was over. Isn't that true? Yes. Okay. Anybody before I go on? Anybody want to say anything before I go on?
Like you went all the way back to Adam and Eve, and like, you know, when you come back to God, it's like the prodigal son. You know, He doesn't look at you like that. When He looks at you, He sees you as Jesus. You know, He puts that ring on your finger and puts that robe on you, and it's a robe of righteousness in exchange for the different kinds of coats or cloaks that we were wearing, the shame and the guilt, the humiliation or whatever. We take that stuff off, throw it to the side, and when you get in the presence of God, it's glory and it's majesty and it's splendor, and there's something tangible and thick about it, and there's no denying it. So to keep going back, I mean, like, I can't get enough of it, you know? I know who to go to, like you said, who to go to for your source. That, you know, if I need advice or counsel, then I'll go to a few different people, but God is the source. There's something different about a person who's in His presence for more than, you know, countenance, everything changes about you in the presence of God. That's your secret place,
Yes.
you know, where things happen for you.
And that's that hiding place that we're talking about, having a new hiding place. And that's going into that secret place or that connection. And I have a scripture that I want to read, but I didn't want to cut anybody off that wanted to say anything. And this is out of Psalms 1, and I'm going to start with verse 2, and it says, "But delight in the law of the Lord, meditating night and day," or day and night, that we are meditating, right? We're having that contact that Bob was talking about a while ago. We're having that contact with Him. Now, you say, well, I'm not very good at that. Well, it's all about practice. It's all about continuing to do that. And the more you do it, the better you get, right? You're able to open up. I had a fella talking to me the other day, and he was surprised about his experience. And I said, well, when you open up your heart, things start to happen. And for most of us, we've lived through a hellish world, because this is a pretty hellish world, right? And we keep ourselves pretty well concealed and covered up. But to really have this relationship with anyone, including God, we have to be willing to open up. And that's something we have to learn, because we learn to cover up, right? We learn to close up. We learn to armor up, right? To try to protect ourselves. And I'm not trying to be bad. That's what we had to survive, and that's what we did. But now to go ahead and to have recovery and to be able to thrive spiritually, we have to be willing to start to open up. And you can't do it all at once. It's little by little. It's piece by piece. And the rest of that story is you open up a little and then you close up a lot. And you open up a little bit and you close up a lot. And where you can start to gain the confidence and the skills to be able to function in a world where you're more exposed, open. And most of us are pretty frightened of that. Would you agree? Have I started into too heavy all at once? But step 11 is a heavy step, okay? So, and let's go back to the scripture. Verse 2, this is out of Psalms 1. It says, but they delight, okay? We enjoy being connected to the law of God, and that we meditate. We're in that connection the best we can, whatever that is. God understands. We just begin to start doing that. So we meditating day and night. This is really interesting. Then verse 3 says, they are like trees, okay, planted along the riverbanks, bearing fruit. Every season, their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do. Now, I don't know, I just felt I got as I was going through this and preparing this, I got a little different picture, a deeper meaning, at least for me, and I'm going to try to share that. Hopefully it'd be helpful to you. But meditating night and day, just like a tree planted there by the banks in difficult times, hot times, cool times, dry times, wet times, but the tree is planted there because it's vital to have a water source, right? It's vital to have a spiritual connection source with God, all right? And so this tree is planted by the river, and it's always pulling sustenance from the source. And it's just pulling it in. It's not all at once. It's little by little by little, okay? But it's connected. It's kind of like a trickle charger on a battery, Okay? It's not one of those quick charge things. It's just trickling. And it's building up that battery and to the place where if it stays connected all the time, it's ready to go all the time. What do you think about that? And so it says that, so the tree, like a tree planted along that riverbank, bearing fruit in its season. So whenever the time is right, when the season is right, after going through the seasonal changes or the seasonal spiritual seasons, okay, or life seasons, okay, psychology says that you change your entire personality to a major degree every 10 years. So we change and we conform and transform. And if you stay plugged in to the source, then you're always ready, and then you don't have to make fruit. Fruit just happens. Do what? Make sense? And so, because you're connected to the source, and the leaves never die, so you're always alive. And it provides shelter to other things, other creatures. Okay, it's even nourishment to others, and then you have that fruit. Yes, John.
It's like, there's a song about that says, like a tree planted by the waters, I will not be moved.
Yes. And this analogy is in several different scriptures throughout out the Bible, but Psalms 1, and this translation, of course, this is the NIV translation, which is a little bit different than actually I learned many years ago on Psalm 1, but it's a great psalm. So those are my thoughts on this Psalm 1 about meditation and the importance of meditation. But I want you to understand that tree just worked its way to the source. Okay? Right? It was planted and the roots went that way and it made that connection. And it's little all the time. Yes, ma'am.
The roots were deep.
Roots, some were deep, some were shallow.
Yes.
And
Deep.
but they had to go, particularly by we know beside the rivers around here, they have to be pretty deep to keep a tree and standing up, right? So, but they're liking this to meditation, and that you're having that connection. All right. Describe conscious contact, and that is practicing that conscious awareness of God. Okay, that He is here, that He is aware, that I am His presence, and that He is doing things in my life whether I see Him or not. Okay, and the reality is you can look back and you can see all the things that He did in your life if you're willing to look, right? But oftentimes we can't see them as we're passing through them. But we can choose to believe that they're there whether I recognize them or not.
It's kind of like not being able to see the forest for the trees. You see your problems, and you can't see the solution, but the solution is right there in front of you. You're focused on your problem so much that you just not paying attention to anything else.
Yes. Yes. And if we just recognize that I am connected. Now, David knew that he was connected to God, and he didn't let his problems, his missteps, his relapse, which we're going to be talking about relapses here in a minute, these relapse to throw him in a emotional tailspin and cause him to wreck himself or punish himself or set himself off or cut his own roots off that were running out to the river. Okay? If it was us, we'd say, I don't deserve the life stream water, so I'm just going to cut my roots off. So, anyway, so in the, and so that's David. David had many personal battles, and he had some regular, other battles, you know, and I did some reading, where, I think it was in 2 Samuel, where David went through just praising God for everything. And he went through all sorts of praise, for thanking God for what was going on. But he had almost lost the battle. He was tired. He was wore out. And the giant that he slayed back when he was his youth, that giant's relatives were coming to kill him. And some of his men came and rescued him. And I think they exterminated all of them. I think there was like 5 or 7 different giants that they dealt with, and I think permanently maybe dealt with that problem. And so, but after that, he praised God for all that had been in his life. And, you know, one of the messages that I got out of that is sometimes in our weakness, God brings in someone else to fight that battle for us. So, anyway, that was out of 2 Samuel, I think 21, if you want to read the story. All right. So how do you compare addiction to God as far as a hiding place? Because we used addiction as a hiding place, right? And we're going to have because we're going to have problems at every stage in life. And so we're either going to turn to our old hiding places, or we're going to have to find new hiding places. And that's what this is about, is a new hiding place. And that is hiding in God instead of substances or behaviors.
I think, if you're talking about comparing the two, I think one would have to be forewarned that where substances, as far as escape, is pretty immediate, God is not always so immediate, and you may have to tolerate some discomfort if you want to really change what you've been doing. You got to do something different. But it's like I was talking with somebody this week about somebody who is using substances to self-medicate because they may, whether it be through pain or mental health. And substances, street drugs, work better than over-the-counter medications because they're so powerful, they're killing you, but they're so extreme that they wipe out a lot of symptoms for a lot of people. And then people try to change their life and they try to get some pharmaceutical thing, and which is a good decision. That's what we should strive to do. But there's a lot of discomfort in the in-between because we've had something so potent. And so it's kind of like that with God, because you can go out and get ripped and you have an immediate escape from your pain or your stress or whatever it is you're escaping from. And if you want to turn from that and make God your escape, that's not always so immediate. It seldom is immediate, and you're going to have to tolerate some discomfort. And there's life in one and death in the other. But sometimes we're not thinking about that.
We just want to deal with the pain.
And when you know how to make it go away,
It's hard
it's
not to
talking
do.
to you, and it knows just what to say.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true, and as we've said for years, that there is pain in recovery, and it's hard to recover, but it's healthy, okay? It's, what you're talking about is the short track is to numb out, to get the quick fix, to quick escape. You weren't here when I was talking about, but Bill McLemore is on hospice. And he said, just tell everybody that the doctor says that the reason why he has cancer throughout his body is because of the drugs and alcohol. And that, and that he loves everybody, and that, Jesus is the answer. And, but the fact of it is, he wouldn't have it any other way. But that doesn't mean that it's easy. And I think he even said that, I know I can get rid of this pain, but I'm not going to do it that way. And he was having pain while I was there, and so a lot of discomfort. But peace and freedom is what we're talking about. And here in a minute, I'm going to talk about harm reduction type method to help us deal with trying to get what you're talking about, to get things under control. And it's a process, because we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for a process to get better. And we have a mindset, that it should be quick, immediate, and that it's all about, white knuckling it and making a choice to be different. But the fact of it is, and you can correct me on this, Zach, but our behaviors and our drugs of choice they're strong and they're powerful, and they have had a hold of us, and they can mess with us, and they don't want to let go.
You have a relationship with them. I didn't interrupt you.
Go ahead.
You have a relationship with them.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, a lot of people don't understand. They act like if they've never used anything or they've never been in that situation, they feel like they act like, oh, well, you should just stop doing it. And there's a relationship. I mean, you have went to this thing and you're in your worst, most painful moments, and it's giving you relief, and it may have been all you had at the time, and you could, you could have done something different. A lot of people can't do anything different, and there's a relationship there. There's trust there. It's part of who you are. It's identity. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff wrapped up into this.
It's complex. And I agree, and it's just not as simplistic as some might say, and when you were saying that, even if you just think about being addicted to coffee, and people drink a lot of it and then stop, and then they can have headache, they can have vomiting, they can have diarrhea, they can have all kinds of things going on because of that. You can stopping anything cold turkey is hard, and for some drugs it can be deadly.
It can kill you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You
You were talking about harm reduction, and there's a lot of people in recovery that are totally against that. And the truth is, that kills people. When you walk up to somebody and you go, oh, well, you're not, just because you're doing less than you did yesterday. The truth is, harm reduction starts at thinking, I just don't want to have as many beers today as I did yesterday. You may have more, but at least you're mentally preparing that you want to be and do something different, whatever your drug is. That's literally where harm reduction starts.
And that's what we have to celebrate that. And I think that's what we tried to do here at Saturday Night Live, is to celebrate all the steps, but usually those that are making those steps don't recognize them.
Absolutely.
And so we want to celebrate them and say, hey, you're doing better. You're doing better. Even though it may not feel like it, you don't think you should be doing more, because that's what we always say, but that is, and I cut you off, and I'm sorry, but that's harm reduction, and I think we do that here, and we try to make that intention is because it's not about perfection. It's about progress. It's one step at a time, a little bit by little bit. And that is worth a lot. I was going to say something. No, it's worth a lot. It makes a difference. And because you're making progress. And if you sabotage yourself by saying, well, I should have done more, well, you're hurting yourself. You're harming yourself. And even if it's using some sort of drug or something that is less harmful than the drug that you have chosen to help you to begin to curb your addiction. There's a lot of people don't like Zach said, there's a lot of people that doesn't like that. But the fact of it is, that is process. That's progress. That's you're making it. Just being able to think about it, like you said, and I like that. Just to start to think differently. That I can start to do something, even if I'm not able to do something. Right? Yes, ma'am.
If you start thinking differently, you'll start talking differently, you'll start behaving differently. You get all that negative crap out of your head that's been spoken over you, that you spoke out against yourself,
Right.
and that caused you to do those things in the first place, and speak a new language, and positive, just positive.
But you can't speak that if you're not willing to even start to think that.
Yes.
And you fight yourself in the first steps of even starting to try to think differently. You war against yourself, and you're always fighting yourself, and and then there's that other part of you that says, well, am I doing the right thing? Or, maybe this is a waste of time. And that's the reason why group is so important, is to hear other people's story that they made those same steps. They've been able to fight some of those same demons, if you don't mind that terminology. They've been able to, they know what you're going through because they've done it, and they've been able to make it, and it's hard, but it's healthy, and you can get some hope from that situation. And hope is so very, very, very important. So, there will always be time when you feel you need to find a safe place where you need to run and hide. Always. King David did, okay? Hey, if you look at Jesus, when he got trouble, he went into the mountains and prayed, okay? Right? And so we all, in our sphere of life, will have difficulties, and then we need to have that conscious contact of that source to help us through that time, that refuge, that place that's safe to us, okay? And so we'll always have that. And what I want to talk about here was about meditation and relapse, okay? That relapse is a part of recovery. Now, we talk about this around here, but there's a lot of places that don't want to talk about this because they think that that you should never relapse. It should be all straight up. There should never be a problem after you make a decision. That's always, it's a rose-petaled path. It's great, and that there's never going to be a relapse. Well, that's not true. That's not been my experience. That's not what I've seen. That's not what people I've worked with. Because and the people that have the strongest stated belief along that line with good intentions. I'm not saying their intentions are not good, but the fact of it is, if we have that rigid of mindset, you're gonna go over a cliff and you don't know what to do. And that's the reason why we have to have relapse prevention issues and relapse recovery programs to help us, so we know, we say, all right, I already made a plan for this. Because when you're in the middle of crisis, that's not the time you need to create a plan, right? Because you're not thinking right. You can't think, okay? You're spun out. You're wiped out. Does that, I mean, right? And so if we can already have pre-thought through some plan, even if it's not a thorough plan, but any plan is better than no plan at all, right? And I always like to use the boxing analogy, that one of the first things, something I read many years ago, and it was about substance abuse and alcohol, actually it was about alcohol, is that it's like learning how to box. The first thing they teach boxers is that when you get knocked down, you stand up. Don't try to figure out why you got knocked down. Don't try to blame it on somebody else because you're down. Don't try to figure out where you are. You're down. Don't think about it. Just stand up. Because if you're down for the count and you're having to try to think, it takes a while to be able to start to think. And so time is going by, and if you have to try to start to think and process and figure things out, you're going to be counted out. We're talking about a boxer. And I have literally, when I was a kid, was watching a boxing match on TV. I think it was like an Olympic deal, and that a boxer got knocked down, and he jumped straight up. Okay, it was kind of like he was programmed. You know what I mean? He jumped straight up and was on his feet, and the ref was walking over to him to look at him, and he fell over again. Well, but my point here is, his brain knew how to keep himself in the game, even though he wasn't thinking, but he'd already pre-programmed himself. Yes, he was knocked out, but still, there was a part of him that still was functioning. And I say this, that we need to have a plan how to recover from missteps, relapses, blowouts, whatever you want. You know, and I like some of the information. They've given some points here, and I'm going to give the points, the main points of what. Basically, I've talked about most of it already, but relapse, they said this, and this is an article that I took out of Psychology Today, and it said that relapse is the rule. And that's a pretty hard statement for a lot, okay? Relapse is the rule for people, okay? And the reason why is because we've lived so long in that other pattern. To break the pattern and never relapse, that's what we want to do. And that's what we strive to do, but the reality is, somewhere, okay, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it's what you do when it happens that matters. It's the boxer, every boxer gets knocked down, okay? It's not reality for a boxer to think, well, I'll never get knocked down. But it's what you do when you get knocked down that matters, right? So they said this, relapse is the rule, not the exception, okay, in addiction recovery. That was point number one. Therapists can work with clients through relapse to understand relevant triggers and develop healthy coping skills. And that's what I'm talking about. You build that system of how to deal with relapse. And the fact of it is, you know, Zach made the point is that if you're drinking less than you were, or at least you're wanting to drink less than you were, all right, then you're moving that direction, okay? And it takes time because our biggest problems are inside here, okay? Our thinking, our emotions, okay? And the drug or the alcohol have the addictive power, but that relationship, Zach used the word relationship, that emotional relationship we have to the substance, okay, is extremely powerful. In some cases, it may be, we think it's our best friend. But it's not. But we believe that it is. Why? Because it has always been my way of escape.
Security blanket.
Yeah. You know, it will be there for me. It just gives me less and less and costs more and more each time, and takes and takes and takes, right?
Yep.
Right? And so we need to identify the triggers, because there are things that jump up at us all the time. The trouble is, we've lived most of our life denying the triggers. And even when we feel them, or that we experience them, or they go to pushing us around, we pretend they're not there.
Ignore them. Try to.
Am I speaking the truth?
Yeah.
And so, yes, you may not be able to deal with them, all right, to start off with, but you'll never be able to deal with them if you don't start recognizing them and say, that's one of my trouble spots. That's a trigger. And every time I dance with that trigger, it takes over, right?
There's a tool that I found, and it's one thing I love to use when I work with people. It's called a relapse autopsy, and it's like a 15-page document, so I don't bring it out all at once because it intimidates you. But all it is it starts how you are right now when you relapsed, or like what you've been doing between now and when you first relapsed. What happened when you used? What happened 5 minutes before you used? What happened an hour before you used? What happened that day? What happened that morning? How'd you feel when you woke up? What happened the night before? And then it starts to spread out. What happened a week? And it goes back like to 3 months. And it helps you understand what happened to you and why you ended up where you didn't want to be. And, triggers has become, people kind of laugh at that word now. It's like this, but the truth is they're real. We all have them. You can deny it if you want to, but, like you used to say all the time, think about what you're thinking about. If you don't want to keep going off in the ditch, you gotta think about how you're getting there. And, it's like, you don't have to have this document to do this. Just ask yourself, okay, how do I end up here? What happened to me? Like, it asks you, did you have a life change? Did you move? Did somebody die? Did you change jobs? Can you not get a job? It asks you, are you homeless? Is it cold outside? It asks you all this different stuff, because all those things, they impact us. We act like we ought to be, tough enough to not do it, but it's not about that. It's about, because the truth is that we know what we put in our bodies harms us, and I became aware that I was killing myself with, substances and things, and just my behaviors. I was committing slow suicide, because I've attempted suicide, so I know what that's like. And I thought that this was totally different, but the truth is, this harms me, it can kill me. It's gonna kill me slowly, but I'm still doing it. Because it's worth getting away from what's bothering me right now. Sometimes it's what you're thinking about. You just wanna quit thinking about it. You know, I mean, it's very, what you're talking about is very, very important, because we're never gonna do anything different if we don't think about what we're doing. If we don't find out what our triggers are. I'm always around this person that maybe one of you, maybe they're driving you nuts. You know, I wanna be on this person because I know they got dope and I wanna use their dope. You know, I mean, we gotta quit lying to ourselves. The
Right.
truth is, we bullshit ourselves
Right,
more than anybody else does,
right.
you know? And it's, you know, if we wanna quit dying, we've gotta look at the stuff that you're talking about. We gotta find out what is pushing me into that stuff that's killing me.
And the biggest thing about harm reduction approach is that, is trying to keep people alive long enough to be able to make these adjustments, to go through this process, okay? And, because with the other way, it's not very effective. Yeah, I hope you don't mind me saying that, but
No,
it's, the stats show that.
I've talked with people about harm reduction, and they may be using 5 different things, and they want to quit all of it because it's all bad. I'm like, okay, what's the worst one? What's the most deadly one you're doing? Okay, can we reduce that one? People freak out. Well, I don't want to keep doing everything else. You're not going to quit everything at one time. You're not going to do
It's
that.
impossible.
Nobody's going to do that. You know.
Your body couldn't handle it anyway.
Yeah,
Your body could not handle it anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
Your body would
let
shut
alone
down.
how dangerous that is, but you can't fight on every front.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and then what goes hand in hand here, I don't know if you mentioned Medicare or not, I thought maybe you did, was Medicaid assisted treatment.
I was getting ready to,
Okay.
I started today, go ahead,
Well,
but yeah. Go ahead.
it's just like they don't feel like harm reduction, they don't like Medicaid assisted treatment, okay? Like I said earlier, it's not like a street drug, it's a lesser drug, and it's gonna help you so that you're not dying on the inside, and maybe you can get free from some of this stuff, you know, and but people, oh, you're still using something,
Right.
you know, and it's ridiculous.
And you also have people that you're in contact with that are assisting you. And in this information, it said one of the main things they try to do is, yes, we want you to say you're going to stop using, but more than anything else, we want you to stop hiding, denying, and lying, okay? Even if you do relapse, even if you do misstep, or even have a full-blown, deal, that you don't hide it. You deal with it. And I always think about Kyle when when they gave him 30 days to live, and it just overwhelmed him. And so he took a shot of dope. And he didn't know what he was going to do after he did that. And he showed up here at the church, and he felt so badly because he was punishing himself that we walked out in the alley and up on there's a little wall, like a brick wall, and we sat on that brick wall, and he told me what was going on and that he did it, and he was sorry. And I said, well, what'd you learn? And he said, I learned no matter how much time I got, that's not the way I want to be. I'm not going to do that. And that 30 days turned into 30 months.
Over 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, over 3 years.
And so I just remember that one time I had him do the testimony. I remember saying 30 days, because at that time it was 30 months, but of course he had still time in. So, but the fact of it is, the point that they're making here is, if you can stop the lying, okay, lying to yourself and lying to others, and that hiding and scheming and all that begins to set you free, because then you can be. That doesn't mean that we approve of you using, but you don't approve of your using, okay? But we approve of your progress, okay? You're making healthy steps, and that's what we want. That's the reason why we sometimes People get upset. We say here at Saturday Night Live, you can come high, you can come intoxicated, okay? As long as you don't infringe on somebody else's space, you can come that way, because we accept you, even though we don't like your stuff, but we want to help you with your stuff. But we can't help you if you're not here, or if you're not watching on video. So, and that's all we want to do, is we want to help. We want to help you to get better, to grow, okay? The third point, which I think we pretty much have already dealt with, is patients should not feel defeated by relapsing. And that's really hard. That's really hard. I had a person here some time back that they didn't. It was, I guess you'd call it maybe a little step, because they put their finger in it and tasted it. But then they stopped right there. But they inflicted hell on themselves for 6 months because they kept it a secret. And they tortured themselves. They cut themselves off from everybody because they were punishing themselves, because I should have known better, I should have done differently, you know, and blah, 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 blah. You get me? We've all done that, right? But the fact of it is, soon as they told me about it, things started shifting in their life. Okay? And then they told it to me again. All right? And you think, well, they only have to tell you it once. Well, you know, sometimes it takes a while to get some of that emotional stuff out of your system. You kind of have to purge it a little bit at a time. Does that make sense? So we need to not feel bad when we relapse, even though we do. We don't want you, nobody wants you to. You didn't plan on doing that consciously. Unconsciously, sometimes our brain does play tricks on us. Sometimes it wants to work against us because it wants us to go back into that unhealthy comfort zone. It's just the way it is, and we need to recognize that, okay? And so we should strive to have progress, not perfection. And that's the way it is in everything, in all of our growth, in all of our development. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Any comments?
I just think everybody should know that if you're in a medicated assisted treatment program, I can't speak for everybody, I'm not trying to plug anything here, but I know that at New Directions, if you're honest about your use, you don't get removed from the program. Because it's all about, we're talking about not hiding and lying, and that goes back to the Bible and stuff. You drag it to the light, it loses its power.
Right.
And people like to act like it's just weakness if you're on medicated assisted treatment. You are jumping through a lot of hoops. You are talking to counselors, and you are doing all kinds of stuff. You're working your recovery. You're not just showing up someplace and getting a prescription and walking away. It's not the way it works. And if you're on medicated assisted treatment, if you're doing that, you're in recovery. You are. I don't care if anybody ever told you.
Yes.
If you're doing harm reduction, it counts. You're in recovery.
Yes.
We have to quit saying that recovery is cookie cutter and then not acting like that in recovery.
Well, we're trying to grow, and hey, listen, what I believe nowadays is not what I believed, 15 years ago. Okay? Yeah. Or maybe even 10 years ago. And maybe not even 5 years ago. Okay? Maybe not even yesterday. Right? Maybe even not even, early this morning. Who knows? That's what growth is about, and we're trying to learn and grow and have this relationship, this constant contact, because God is our source. When everything else fails, and everything can and probably will fail, God is our source. And there's a part of us that doesn't want to trust God even. I understand that. That's because that's the way we humans are. But to the degree that we're able to do that, that positions us to where He's able to work in us in ways that He wouldn't be able to work in us. Not saying that He isn't going to work in us, but our positioning in our relationship gives Him more access to us because we've opened up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let me scan through this material and see if there's anything that I and on drug assistance, drug replacement, all of those are, in fact, I listened to one guy talk about, providing clean needles to people that were shooting up and coming in and being able to be accepted as a human. He didn't say this is what I'm going to say, that accepted as a human being, that they were valuable enough to treat with some respect. And even though they were still shooting up, because of that, and because of that contact, because see, the biggest issue that we have is this hiding, isolation, avoidance, or running to the places that are really the worst for us, okay, instead of being the best for us. You know what I'm talking about, the places that are worse for us. We know what they are, okay? But sometimes that's the only place that we feel like we can be accepted. Except the fact of it is, they're still out to take you for whatever they can give you. And maybe there's some good-hearted folks, because there's good-hearted folks everywhere, even in the middle of messy stuff, okay? But the trouble is, there's a mindset that can drag you down, and it's going down a whole different pathway here. So anyway, we're not interested in perfection. We're interested in progress. And if you're just one notch better, okay, and if you find a healthy group or community or just a person that can love and accept you and help you and listen to you, that can help you to do that, because we cannot heal alone. Bottom line. Right? Okay, any comments before I close?
Yeah, we've tried to get a needle bank here in Joplin for 5-6 years, and it keeps getting voted down because people think that the needle bank, that you're promoting that, and the truth is that, they're not forced to talk to somebody, but there's caring people there that talk to them. It's a contact point.
Right.
And so some people just get the needle and go, but it's about saving lives. But people find recovery that way because somebody actually cares about them.
Right.
Enough to give them the needle so they don't get something else, that'll kill them, or they don't get the bacteria thing where it kills them later in life and all that. But it actually decreases use in your town to have a needle bank.
According to the stats that I'm aware of, it decreases the use, it decreases death,
Yeah.
and other sicknesses that come, that's related to that, because it is a process of healing, even though it looks like it's not, because it's so far removed from punishment, and we have the mindset that punishment is it's the solution. And punishment doesn't heal you. So, thank you for that. You look like you had something you want to say.
No, I'm good.
Okay, you just had that look on your face. Anybody? John? All right. Okay, hey, thanks for being here. Again, I want to encourage you to pray for Bill McLemore and Leanne. We're just believing for the very best, and we just love Bill and Leanne. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon all of us, and you. Make healthy choices. Till next week, bye-bye.
Sorry for talking too much. I said, I'm sorry for talking.